Cheers folks and welcome to my channel. It is War 3 of Season 5 and this means it's the last war of the first week before the first results come out. It's quite exciting and I would like to thank all of you for the wonderful feedback you've given me. So I'll try to keep my war videos as informative as possible. And today, third opponent is Hyper Glory Team Russia. Season 4 Platinum 1 Alliance. And they're ranked number 42 in war rating currently. They used to be a top 5, top 10 alliance in war or war rating, but that's already some time ago. So, but still, some big profiles in that alliance. Now, the team, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, I've again been assigned Path 7 in Section 2, but I will switch up again on the first section. Still, the team that I need for that path is the same that I used for the two wars before. So it's Blade, Void, and Ghost Rider to give Blade that synergy against villain champions. So no surprises, nothing new on the team. And as you can see, I'm starting not moving to the right, but I'm starting moving towards the middle. Because as I said, I'm starting on path 6. It's also a very common combination to start on path 6 and then move on to path 7 in the second section. And what I did first is I used my energy to reach that first opponent without yet fighting that opponent. Because then I was waiting till I had enough energy in the evening so I could fight the first 3 opponents, boosted basically, all together. So if you use a boost, you should always try to use it on as many opponents as possible. Now the first opponent was a rank 4 science champion, and I looked in the profile. I was suspecting a Quake. And that node, or yeah, the first opponent node is very, very tricky. You have Limber, you can't stun parry a lot. It's unblockable, special 1. And the worst is the Fury buffs. Every 2 seconds that opponent gains a Fury buff. And unless you hit them, you don't take the Fury buffs away. And every Fury buff gives 50% higher attack. So if they have a lot of Fury buffs and they hit you in the block, it really takes a lot of damage. So you don't want them to get a lot of those Fury buffs at all. You really have to fight aggressively. And what I did, because it was a Quake, I used a power-up boost. And the reason why I used the power-up boost is because I wanted to make sure that Blade very quickly is able to gain a lot of energy, a lot of power. Because Quake sometimes, when she charges heavy, like here, she places this aftershock charge on you. Now what happens after the timer of that aftershock charge runs off is that it can stun you. And what you want to do is, when it stuns you, which it did actually, you want to make sure that the stun time is as short as possible. And for Blade that means that the higher power he has, the shorter is the debuff time. So like this, I was able to actually avoid that she stunned me and she hit me. But it was actually too short, so she couldn't hit me back. Now for the next node explanation, I actually had to go to another BG, and I will tell you why in a second. So the next node I was fighting has stun immunity, can't stun him, Bane, which means that when you hit your opponent, you place a degeneration debuff on him for a certain time, and that takes away damage that is based on your health. So the more health you have, the more degeneration you apply. And then enhanced abilities, so everything like evade abilities, stun abilities are enhanced by 20%. Now I was expecting an Ultron, and the reason why I actually fought or decided to fight with Blade is because Bane, as I said, the amount of degeneration you would get if Ultron hit me depends on how much health he has. So what I want to do is I want to take away as much health as possible. So even if the Bane timer swaps over and flips over to me, the actual degeneration is not that high. Now I was lucky because basically I was able to reactivate that Bane timer right away. I was again lucky then because Ultron didn't activate any of his healing. but you know, it can be quite tricky, so you want to make sure that you really take down health as much as possible. And because I still had my power up boost when I was fighting that, I actually forgot to record the node explanation. That's why I had to take it from another battle group. And then to the next node. The next node, 24, is again a healing node. It's buffed, which means every time you get a buff, your opponent regenerates 5% of max health, and that healing is again amplified by a recovery 200% boost. On top, it's a limber node, so you cannot stun parry that much, or every time you do, the timing is being reduced. And I wasn't quite sure because it's a skill, and the skill is always a bit dangerous, because you would naturally go in with Void, but if it's an Agent Venom or a Kingpin, so basically two champions which are able to shrug off debuffs, then you have hardly any possibility to get them down in time. I checked also the calculations with my Scouter lens. It was clear it was not a Korg, so I had to assume it's either Agent Venom or it's Kingpin. And in that case, it is actually safer to go in with Blade and just take off Dexterity. Because Dexterity is the only thing that could give Blade a buff, which is the only thing that could give healing to your opponent. So once you take off Dexterity, you're actually fine. You have to adapt your fighting style, but you're actually fine not to trigger healing in your opponent. So I decided not to take that fight with Void, and you know, Void is always my favorite when it comes to healing nodes, but this is the only exception when Void actually is not the perfect answer. So I decided to take that fight also with Blade. So basically the entire first path was in the end a Blade path for me. And I was right. I was really happy when I saw, yes, it's an Agent Venom. And there, Void would really have been a tricky fight. And probably I wouldn't have been able to get him down in time. Now, what you do now that Dexterity is off is you just block. You don't evade, you just block. What you do is you let him hit your block, because basically, I mean, he can shrug off your parry stuns. So just let him hit your block, evade his heavies. And then what I do, I always try to have him fire off his special 1. Why? Because after his special 1, when he hits the special 1 into my block, I can attack right away, like here. You can counter right away after his special 1. So you do, during the entire fight, take quite a bit of damage, like block damage, but, you know, it's nothing that is in any way like a big problem or a big danger. You know, you just take away some scratches, which is better, again, than dying or not being able to take down that opponent. So it's rinse and repeat. Evade the heavy, get him to special 1, evade a special 1, or block a special 1, and then directly counter attack him back. And again, if you ask, does Blade do enough damage output? I mean, here he didn't even have danger sense on. He doesn't bleed Agent Venom. So still, he gets him down absolutely fine in time, absolutely no problem. And that was the fights in the evening. So all Blade fights and all done pretty solid. And then the next fights were for the next day. I was waiting till I had 5 energy again to be able to boost all the way up to the mini-boss. And 31, the node, is also a buffered node, so it's the same effect that I just described. It's also enhanced healing through the recovery. But here, it was clear that it's Sentinel, so not a skill champion, not a champion that shrugs off debuffs. So here, Void clearly is the right and was the right answer. So I decided to go in with Void against Sentinel. Now, Sentinel, personally, I hate fighting Sentinel because everything takes forever. I think the biggest advice that I can give you when you fight Sentinel on this node or on any mini-boss node is not to be impatient. you really have to be patient to the very last second. The strategy with Void is pretty much the same as you would fight anybody else on this node with Void. It's spamming special ones and debuffs. Again, what you want is petrify debuffs, and then you evade his attacks, especially his specials. You get a dexterity buff, and when you get the dexterity buff, he is supposed to regenerate, but because of the petrify buffs, he degenerates. So you want to turn his healing into degeneration. That's the whole point of, you know, or the whole tactics how to fight with Void against these kind of opponents there. And then also, I always try to have him fire off his special one, because after his special one, you evade the first one, you evade the second one, and then you basically again can directly counter attack. That's why I prefer to have him attack with his special one. What you want to watch out a little bit for, again on such a fight, is not to get cornered on your side of the map. That's again the only danger. If that is something that is about to happen, I would prefer to get him to a special 2 attack, even when he has 100 analysis charges and he fires off his special attack 2, and usually he would trigger then Incinerate on your block. It doesn't matter with Void because he's Incinerate immune. So you can actually even take a special attack 2 with 100 analysis charges from Sentinel, is not a problem. I'd rather have that than being cornered on my side of the map. That is the biggest danger, the biggest risk that you have. But this was pretty straightforward. It was in the end he was always firing off his special ones. I could evade his special ones, and in the end it was again the dexterity buff that killed him, because it turned his regeneration into degeneration. More than 2-minute fight, again, you really have to be patient and just, you know, stay focused all the time during the fight. That's a bit painful sometimes against a Sentinel. And then the next node, and here you can see a persistent charge, and the persistent charge means for Science Champ it can be 2 champions, it can be Sentry or Modok. A Sentry on that node does not make sense at all, so it was clear to me this is going to be a Modok. And a Modok also can be tricky because of explosive personality. Again, every time you hit his block, he gains an armor up, and when he has more than 5 armor ups, he takes away 25% of your health. So you really have to avoid hitting his block. Now the problem is, the moment he auto parries you, he gains such a block armor up. So you have to fight him not triggering his auto block at all. And how you do that is you take away his flux with your heavy. And then you have a certain amount of time that you can do normal hits, like light and medium attacks. Then you wait till he has flux again, and you take it again away with your heavy. And that's just rinse and repeat. Take away the flux with the heavy, and then when the flux is off, you can hit him with normal attacks or your specials. And you should really stick to that, because as you will see in a moment, I got really impatient. Now I just really wanted to have him like down. So what I did is I was waiting too long and thought, now is actually a good time to activate my special 2. And that's when I started hitting his block and got more than his 5 armor ups, and he took away 25% of my health. And then I was really pissed, and I was so pissed that I then missed the next block. But okay. I think the principle is clear. The principle, again, take away his flux with the heavies, and then you can just hit him with normal attacks. That's the principle you should apply, and the most important, you should stick with that principle and not, like me, make stupid, impatient mistakes till the end. But, okay. I had still 3/4 of my health with blades, so it was nothing really risky. It was just unnecessary. And now the next node, again, a healing node, arc overload every 20 seconds, plus, again, amplified healing. And a Cosmic Champ is always to take with Void. There is a tricky one, which is Hyperion. There you have to watch out that he, you don't get him to his special 3. But I actually looked at the stats here, and it was very clear it's not a Hyperion, but it was very clear it's going to be a King Groot. And there again, Void is the perfect match against him. What I do is I always parry stun him in the beginning twice to take away his Fury buffs, because once his Fury buffs are off, then your debuffs stick. So, just try to get him to the phase where he's actually regenerating. Don't bother about him regenerating. It doesn't matter. During that phase when he's regenerating, that's when you can actually get your debuffs sticking on him. And then what you do is you get him to the special 1. You evade his special 1. It's really easy to evade. I try to never get him to a special 2. And at the end of the day, at the end of the fight, if he has enough, if you're lucky enough to, get enough Petrify, or to start the fight with Petrify debuffs on him, then the healing is reversed very quickly, and then the fight is also going very quickly, even though he does have a lot of health. But again, the principle with Void is to kill slowly and to kill by reversing the champion's healing. And yeah, it's the same principle all along. Void is not the one that does quick fights. It's not a Corvus Glaive. It's not a Ghost, where it's about, getting your opponents down in as few hits as possible. That's not the way how to fight with Void. Void is slow. Void takes time. Void takes patience, but he will get them down. 100% sure. And yeah, I really enjoy. I think personally, I have to say that Void really is my favorite. There's no fight that takes only 1 minute or so. Most of the fights like this one take more than 2 minutes. But then towards the end, this feeling when they heal, and actually by healing they are killing themselves. I think that's the nicest thing to watch when you're fighting with Void. So that fight, again, took a bit of time, but the healing always kills them in the end. And then again, I was proceeding to the mini-boss. The mini-boss today was a Green Goblin. Also, very strong healing champion. Actually, though, he's a villain. So I fought him on this node both with Void and with Blade, and both get him down. It's not a problem. It's more like, maybe a preference, who you think is better. The strike back is always a bit easier with Void, because Void after a while avoids that he gains any power from a strike back. But in this case, my decision was purely based on the fact that Void had more health, and I didn't want to use any more potions on Blade. So I said, okay, the best choice to go in is with Void. Now, there are some champions that you want to, have at special attack 1. Now, the good thing about Green Goblin is it doesn't really matter. I personally actually prefer him getting to his special 2, because I think the special 2 is easier to evade than the special 1. And then again, it's the same principle. You try to apply debuff and debuff and debuff, and especially petrify debuffs, petrify debuffs, petrify debuffs. And again, then he gets his madness charges, and the madness charges fuel his healing, and the healing is reversed into degeneration, and he is killing himself again. Now, I was a bit, because I think I've done this Green Goblin fight so many times on this node, and I know it's, there's no way that, I'm going to die to this fight. Still, I was very sloppy. As you can see, twice I lost my block. I was not really concentrated, I was not really focused until I was at this stage where I had like 60% of my health left. And I said, okay, get yourself together, get your shit together, and now no more mistakes. So that's when I started to fight a bit more seriously, and in the end, again, now he has Fear of the Void plus a Petrify debuff, And then now he gets a lot of madness charges, and the madness charges really degenerate a lot, and he's down. So, not a perfect fight, but all very safe, no risk really of dying during those fights. And again, a little heads up, the war is not over yet, but we have quite a lead over our opponents, so I'm very, very confident that we're going to win the third war of the season, which would mean we would have a perfect first week of Season 5. And yeah, I'm just happy again, no death on my path. I hope it was informative again. A new path in Section 1, some new champions to talk about. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you find it useful. So if you like it, give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. And again, I hope your first week of Season 5 went really well. And have a great day. Cheers, folks.